Do you remember when you were younger, when you had that kind of innocence to believe that if you were truly there for people, truly all in, without counting, they would be there for you in the same way? You answered everyone. You gave your time without looking at the clock. Someone needed to talk at midnight, you were there. Someone had a problem on a Sunday morning. You picked up. You had this slightly naive, slightly beautiful generosity of believing that the world would give back to you what you gave to it. And for a long time, you didn't see that it didn't work like that. You kept going. You became the reliable person, the one who always answers, the one who is always available, always plugged in. So much there that nobody noticed it anymore. It's like Wi-Fi, you only realize it's there when it cuts out, and then one day you cut it. No drama, no announcement, you just stopped. You didn't answer right away. You didn't call back within half an hour. You left a message unread, not to provoke, not to play a game, just because you had nothing to say, or because you didn't have the energy, or because for the first time, you chose not to be the one who fills the void, and things started to move. Well, in this video, I'd like us to talk about that, about what happens when you withdraw. Not withdrawing like a hermit in the mountains, not cutting off the whole world, not becoming that mysterious guy that videos sell you. I'm talking about something simpler and more difficult at the same time. I'm talking about stopping being available by default. Do you remember the moment you felt something was wrong? It was maybe one evening. One of those evenings where you had answered everyone, done favors for 2 people, had 3 parallel conversations on your phone, and when you finally put the phone down, when you finally had silence, there was nothing. Not sadness, not fatigue, just a void. As if you had spent the day handing out pieces of yourself and there was nothing left for you. And your thought is, it's weird, I should feel good. I helped plenty of people. But no, you were empty. A hallway with no one in it. That void, you know it. You try to fill it, you turn the screen back on, you scroll, you look for a message, anything. Because silence is honest. And honesty isn't what we look for at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night when we're exhausted. The one who is everywhere is nowhere. Who wrote that? And if you listen to it carefully, this phrase, if you really let it sink in, something happens. Being so present for everyone that you end up being absent from your own life. From the outside, it looks like kindness. It looks like a good person. But from the inside, you know it's something else. Do you know what it really is? It's surveillance. You are monitoring yourself. You measure your worth by the speed at which you respond. An unread message and you have this tension in your gut as if you've done something wrong. You unlock your phone for no reason, just to check. And let's be honest, it's not just to see if someone needs you. It's to see if someone is thinking about you. If you've been liked, mentioned, included. If you exist in someone else's head. It's ego disguised as availability. And we don't admit it to ourselves because it sounds better to say, I am there for people, than to say, I need people to be there for me. And that goes back a long way. It goes back to the time when you learned, without anyone telling you in words, that love is earned, that if you are useful, you are loved, and that if you are not useful, well, you saw what happened to the kids who were useless in the playground. They were invisible, and you swore to yourself that you would never be invisible. So you became indispensable to your friends, to your family, to your colleagues, to people you don't even really like, but that you continue to help out. Because otherwise what exactly? Otherwise they would love you less? Otherwise you would be worth less? No one signed a contract with you saying be available 24 hours a day or else it's over. You imposed that on yourself and you ended up believing it was the deal. And then one day, and I don't know exactly when it came, it happened in several stages. One day you felt that you couldn't take it anymore. Not in a dramatic way, not a breakdown, just a weariness, a fatigue that doesn't come from the body but from somewhere further away. You looked at your phone and said to yourself, not now, and you didn't answer anything, and the world didn't collapse. People managed. Some even found the answer themselves. And you had recovered something you hadn't had for a long time. Time for nothing, time for yourself, time without a function. And that time had a strange texture. Not rest, not a vacation. It was, how can I say, space. Space for things to come back up. Desires you had forgotten. Pieces of yourself that you had tucked away in a drawer to make room for others. But first, and no one tells you this, first, it hurts. Disappearing even a little bit hurts. Not others, you. You feel like you're doing something wrong. You feel like you're being selfish. There is this voice in your head. You know it. It's been there forever, telling you if you don't answer, they'll forget you. And that voice, it lies. But it lies so well that you take it for your own thought. Marcus Aurelius, a guy who literally had an entire empire that needed him every day, wrote in his journals, "Retire into yourself." And when I saw that, I thought easy to say for an emperor. But actually, no. It's precisely because he was solicited from everywhere all the time by everyone that he needed to remind himself of it every day. No need for mountains, no need for vacations, just coming back to yourself, sitting with yourself and enduring what you find. Enduring is the word, because when you turn down the volume, when you put down the phone and stay with yourself without anything to distract you, there is noise inside too. Questions you pushed away, emotions you covered up with activity. As long as you were busy responding to others, you didn't have to respond to yourself. And now that the silence is here, all those questions arrive at the same time. And that's why many people stay permanently available, not out of generosity, but out of escape. You know what's strange? It's that this availability exhausts you, but it reassures you because as long as you are useful, you exist. And the day you put down the phone and no one asks you for anything, you find yourself facing something you've avoided for years. Who am I when no one needs me? And that question, I'll be honest, it terrified me because I had built my whole life around it. The reliable guy, the one you can count on. And when I removed that pillar, there was a moment of wavering. A moment where I didn't really know who I was anymore. And that's normal, it's even the goal. That wavering isn't pleasant, but that's where the real work happens. It was Seneca who talked about it. He said that a wise man has within himself everything he needs to live. Not because he is perfect, but because he stopped looking outside for what can only be found inside. And that you don't understand by reading it. You understand it by living it. By going through that weird zone where you're no longer the available guy, but you're not yet the guy at peace, and the temptation, believe me, is strong to go back, to pick up the phone, to become the one who answers everything again because it's familiar, because at least when you are useful, you don't have to ask yourself if you have value. And you know what? I went back to it several times. There were evenings where I held out for 2 days without answering anyone, and on the third day I cracked. I picked up the phone, I answered everyone. I said yes to a plan I didn't want to do, and for 5 minutes I felt better, useful, connected. And then the void came back stronger than before because now I knew what I was doing. I could no longer tell myself it was kindness. I knew it was fear. And there is nothing worse than doing something while knowing exactly why you shouldn't be doing it. It's a bit like a guy who stops smoking and takes a cigarette after 3 days. The cigarette isn't better. It's worse because now he smokes with the awareness of what he is doing. And it's the same with availability. Once you have tasted silence, real silence, the one where you have no one to satisfy, coming back into the noise has a different taste, a taste of concession, and you feel it. But if you hold on, and I promise you nothing, I don't know how long it takes, if you hold on in that discomfort, you start to hear yourself. Your own thoughts, your own desires, not those of others, yours. The ones you had forgotten under layers of, yes, of course, Micah, no problem, whatever you want. And you know what? There is a word for what you lived all those years. The Stoics wouldn't have formulated it like that. But Seneca came close when he spoke of those people who spend their entire lives fussing around without ever accomplishing anything real. He called it busy idleness. You are overwhelmed, you are exhausted, you answered 40 messages, you helped 3 people, you ran all day. And if someone asked you, what did you do for yourself this week? Silence, nothing. You did nothing for yourself. You gave your whole day to others and you were left only with the crumbs of the evening. And the evening crumbs are where you take your revenge, you scroll, you watch anything. You stay up too late because it's the only moment of the day that belongs to you. Except it's a scam. You're not recovering, you're digging the hole even deeper. And the next day you're exhausted. So you have even less energy for yourself. So in the evening you start again. True withdrawal isn't stealing time from your night, it's protecting time in your day. Even 10 minutes in the morning, even a walk without headphones, even a coffee drunk slowly without doing anything else. That time looks insignificant, but it's what saves you because it's in those 10 minutes that you find yourself. Not in the 3 hours of scrolling at 2 a.m. Now, I want to talk to you about something important. The difference between being alone and being isolated. Because when I say disappear, there is always someone who hears cut off the world and become a savage. No, isolation is when the world rejects you or when you reject it out of bitterness. Chosen solitude is when you withdraw to fill yourself up. And the difference between the two lies in a single word: choice. You know, there is a moment in this kind of transition between the guy who is always there and the guy who chooses when he is there where you feel something weird. You find yourself looking out the window, listening to the noises of the street as if you had never paid attention before. Noticing details that were always there but that you had never seen because your attention was elsewhere. It's not meditation, it's not an exercise, it's just you without a filter, you without a role to play. And at first it makes you uncomfortable, and then one day it becomes the thing you prefer. Do you remember an evening when you had nothing planned? Not an evening where you canceled a plan, an evening where there was just nothing, and you hesitated between calling someone back, going somewhere, finding something to do, and then finally you did nothing. You stayed at home, and at first it was weird, and then after an hour you felt something you hadn't felt for a long time, a calm. Not the calm of fatigue, the calm of when nothing is missing. That moment is the beginning, it's the first return home. Have you ever noticed that the most interesting people you know are often the people most difficult to reach? Not because they are playing a role, but because they are fine with themselves. When you are with them, you feel they are really there. Not halfway, not with one eye on the phone. They are there entirely. And that presence comes from the fact that they spend time alone, that they have cultivated something inside, that they have accepted not to be reachable all the time. The less available you are, the more your presence has value. It's like a light that stays on permanently. After a while, you forget it exists. But a light that goes out from time to time, when it comes back, you see it. And I know what you're thinking. If I disappear, people will be mad at me. And it's true, some will be mad. I lived through that. People who were used to me always being there, who felt the ground shake when I started to withdraw. Some understood. They let me have my space, and when I came back, it was like before. Others got worried. They called me not because they needed me, but because they cared about me. And then there were those who got angry, who blamed me for not answering, who made me feel guilty. And that's where you learn something you didn't want to know. And I'm warning you, this is the hardest part of this whole video. When you withdraw, you see who is there because they love you and who is there because you are useful to them. There are people in your life, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, who are there solely because you provide a service. Remove that and see what remains. See who calls you when you have nothing to offer. See who checks in on you when you're the one doing badly and you have nothing interesting to say. See who stays when you're not funny, not useful, not accommodating. Just you. It's brutal, but it's necessary. And I'll tell you, when I did this sorting consciously, it made me angry. Because I realized that people I thought were close were just used to me. Like one is used to a piece of furniture. And the day the furniture is gone, they don't say I miss him, they say it's weird without him. It's not the same thing and it hurts. But it's a useful pain because behind that anger, there is a relief. The relief of no longer having to play a role that no one asked you to play except yourself. And there is something else I want to tell you while I'm at it. When you start to withdraw, you're going to go through a period. It can last a few days, a few weeks, I don't know. A period where you're going to feel guilty for nothing, for not answering, for not being there, for not helping. And this guilt will try to bring you back to the old pattern. It will tell you you are selfish, you are ungrateful, people are counting on you. And these phrases are powerful because they sound true. But ask yourself one question, just one. Do these people feel guilty when they don't answer you? Do these people feel guilty when it's you who needs them and they aren't there? Well, there you go, you know the answer. The guilt you feel is a one-way street. You are the one producing it and you are the one suffering from it. The others, they just found someone available, and if it's no longer you, it will be someone else. And that too is hard to hear, but it's the truth. Seneca said, well, I'm paraphrasing him, that we lose the greatest part of our lives doing useless things, a good part doing nothing, and the whole of it doing something other than what we should be doing. And when I read that, I thought of all those evenings where I answered messages that could have waited. Of all those "how are you" texts I sent without wanting the answer. That's not a connection, it's filler. Do you know how much energy you recover when you stop being available for everyone? Every message you answer is a micro-choice. Every "how are you" is a transfer of attention. After 50 micro-choices in a day, you have nothing left. And when you keep that energy, even for just one evening, you feel the difference. You are sharper. You have ideas you hadn't had for months. You read a book and you remember what you read. It's not magic. It's just that you stop draining yourself. Epictetus said that freedom is not being able to do everything we want, but not being a slave to what we want. And when he says that, he is talking about you. About this need to be loved, to be seen, to matter to someone. It's human. But when this need controls you to the point that you can't leave a message unanswered for an hour, it's no longer a need. It's a chain. And the chain is not around your wrist, it's around your attention. Have you ever tried to think about something important? Really think. Not just think about it between two messages and realize that you are incapable of holding it for 3 minutes. You don't have a concentration problem, you have a habit problem. You spent years fragmenting your attention among 1,000 solicitations, and now when you try to gather it, it no longer knows how to do it. It's like a guy who hasn't run for 5 years and tries to run a marathon. The body knows it's possible, but the muscles are no longer there. And it's the same with attention. It's rebuilt slowly by starting small. A meal without a phone, a trip without headphones, 5 minutes in the morning doing nothing, literally nothing. Not meditating, not breathing, not being in the present moment, just nothing. And you're going to realize that nothing is hard, that nothing requires more strength than doing 1,000 things at the same time. Because when you do nothing, there is no more noise to cover what you truly feel. There is a difference between being present and being available. You are available when you answer everyone. You are present when you are truly there for someone. And often the two are mutually exclusive. The more you are available for everyone, the less you are present for anyone. People feel it even if they say nothing. Do you remember the last time someone talked to you and you really listened to them? Not preparing your answer in your head, not glancing at your screen, really listening as if nothing else existed at that moment. It's rare, isn't it? And when it happens to you, when someone gives you that quality of attention, you feel it immediately. You feel seen, you feel important. Not because the person flatters you or gives you compliments, just because they are there entirely. And that quality of presence, you can't give it if you are plugged into 15 conversations at the same time. You can't give it if you have half of your brain occupied by a message you haven't answered yet. You can only give it if you have space. And space is created by withdrawing, by accepting not to be everywhere. No one tells you this about relationships. It's that the best conversations of your life, they didn't happen when you were in the middle of 100 things. They happened after a silence, after a moment alone when you had digested your own thoughts and you could finally be there for someone without ulterior motives. Well, I don't know if it's always true, but at least for me, it changed a lot of things. Marcus Aurelius wrote, and I think he was talking to himself, "People seek retreats in the country, by the sea and the mountains, but you can at any time retire into yourself." And he added that no retreat is calmer than the one we find in our own soul. And that isn't just a pretty phrase, it's a choice you make again every day. The choice to tell yourself every day that your inner peace is worth more than the approval of others. And we never talk about that, the courage it requires. We always talk about the courage to speak up, the courage to fight, the courage to move forward, but the courage to be silent, the courage to sit with oneself without moving, the courage to let people manage without you. Nobody celebrates that because from the outside it looks like nothing. A guy doing nothing, not answering, not being there. But from the inside, and you know it, it's one of the hardest things you've ever done. Staying still when everything in you is screaming at you to move, to answer, to fill, to do a favor. And no one is going to congratulate you for that. No one is going to say, "Well done. You didn't answer a message." The day you disappeared, nobody noticed right away. It came slowly. First, you took a little more time to answer. Then you started spending evenings alone without feeling guilty. Then you realized that silence wasn't a lack, it was a return. And when you came back, because you always come back, it's not an escape. You weren't the same. You were calmer, more, how should I say, more whole. People noticed not because you had changed something visible, but because you were there, truly there. For once, you weren't halfway in the conversation and halfway in your head. And I hadn't expected this. The people who love you, the real ones, they don't love you less when you are less available. They love you better, because when you come back to them, after having taken time for yourself, you give them someone complete, not a leftover, not an exhausted guy pretending to listen while thinking of something else. Someone who chose to be there, and that quality of presence is better than any service you could provide. Have you ever looked at a couple in a restaurant, two people face to face and both on their phones? They are together but they are nowhere, and then from time to time you see another pair, two people talking to each other, looking at each other, and you feel that there is no one else in the room for them, and you tell yourself that's what I want. And you can't have that if you are connected to everyone constantly. You can only have that if you have learned to disconnect, to choose who receives your attention, because attention is the only thing you have that is truly worth something, and you distribute it as if it were infinite. It's not. There are days when it's harder than others, days when the urge to answer everything is stronger, days when silence is more frightening than usual. That's normal, it's a muscle, and a muscle isn't strengthened in a week. But every time you choose to come back to yourself instead of running toward others, you rebuild yourself a little. And I wanted to tell you before finishing what I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. is that you have the right to not be reachable. You have the right to not answer. You have the right to spend an entire day without talking to anyone and not feel guilty. You have the right to turn off your phone, to walk in the street with no destination, to sit somewhere and watch time pass. You have the right to not have excuses for that. You have the right to say, I just wanted to be left alone, and have that be enough. No one will give you this permission. You have to give it to yourself. And the day you do it, truly without guilt, it's one of the best things you'll ever feel in your life. And one day, I don't know when, you realize that you no longer need to be everywhere to exist, that you no longer need to be everyone's Wi-Fi to have value. On that day, you are free. Not free in the dramatic sense, free in the sense that you wake up and you know that the day belongs to you before it belongs to anyone else. And if you are listening to this tonight or during the night or on public transport or whenever, and you recognize yourself in what I've said, then maybe it's the time. Not the time to change everything, not the time to make a grand gesture, just the time to put the phone down, to close your eyes for 5 seconds, to take a breath and to remind yourself that you are here, that you exist outside of what you do for others, that you have the right to disappear a little to find yourself a lot. Take care of yourself and those who come looking for you when you have disappeared. Those, keep them.